Welcome to Critical Junction, episode 69. I'm Mark.
Bonjour, mon nom c'est Luc.
And I am the Pope.
And in June... And in June of 2019, the Quebec government, with support from the Parti Québécois, passed the contentious Bill 21, otherwise known as the Secularism Law, the intent of which was to eradicate religious symbols from the majority of the public sector in that province. The law, which came into effect in September of 2019, effectively bans teachers, police officers, judges, and other public servants from displaying religious iconography like the turban, hijab, kippah, or crucifix while performing their duties. The polarizing bill was naturally met with immediate opposition from those who claim it legalizes discrimination against religious minorities, while proponents of the bill argue it finally makes good on Quebec's claim of being a secular society. What the bill did not do, however, was remove the giant crucifix from hanging in Quebec's Assemblée Nationale, causing many to label the government as hypocrites. The government, meanwhile, defended the exemption of the crucifix, arguing it remains a part of their cultural heritage. What I wonder in that case is which religious symbols aren't part of someone's cultural heritage, and why the government felt it necessary to focus almost exclusively on the more overt religious symbols worn by adherents of certain religions. While I am personally wholeheartedly in favor of societies becoming entirely secular and advocate for the importance of the separation of church and state, having argued many times against the special privilege religion tends to enjoy, there's a world of difference between legislating secularism and allowing religion to gradually die out and be replaced by secular ideas. Forcing a society to become secular by fiat is comparative to religious societies foisting their own ideologies on others. Legislating an idea of or way of life, whether it's banning religious symbols, criminalizing the burqa, or making Holocaust denial illegal, borders on fascism and is prone to violent backlash. Secularism and progress are, as far as I'm concerned, a natural evolution of a society that focuses on forward thinking rather than becoming mired in outdated modalities and ways of thinking. Forcing such an outcome through the use of legislation is heavy-handed, short-sighted, and anathema to an actual secular society that comes about of its own volition and progressive initiative. So, are those who paint the current Quebec government as racist, intolerant, and hypocritical accurate in their assessment, or is there actually some merit to what they've done? And what can those who oppose the law do in the face of the government's majority? And indeed, what can the federal government or those outside the province do in order to challenge it? Let's talk about that, shall we?
Well, what can we do to challenge that? I guess. What have people done? Have we taken that to court yet, or?
Well, Monsieur Chrétien, the problem with taking it to court is... Okay, I can't keep that up. I can't. But yeah, it's been challenged in court. I don't know if it's reached the Supreme Court level yet, but I know it's definitely been challenged in Quebec courts, I think. Is that right? Or am I making that up?
I'm not sure if it's been challenged yet.
Well,
I think
it
only recently came into
in September.
effect.
So I'm totally wrong. I withdraw my initial statement.
Haven't they already? They've already stated that they would invoke the notwithstanding clause, which is that clause that says that even if this law that the province is deciding to institute violates part of the charter, then they claim the right that for the next 5 years they will enforce it anyway, and then after 5 years' time it can be reviewed and probably renewed if they still want to do it. If they're already declaring that they're going to invoke that notwithstanding clause, then whether or not it goes to the Supreme Court is pretty much irrelevant, right? Because they've kind of encoded into our Constitution this huge back door
and there's nothing the Supreme Court could do in that case.
Yeah.
So yeah, I retract my initial statement, and it hasn't been challenged.
I'm not saying that it definitely hasn't. I hadn't heard that it actually had been.
Yeah, neither have I.
I did, however, read that in one school district, there were two people who did not end up getting hired as teachers because they weren't willing to give up the veil.
Right.
the
I
hijab.
thought it was 2 people had been fired or something like that.
No, they just didn't get the job.
I see.
Because first of all, part of this law grandfathers in people who are already employed as civil servants and already have lived out their career with whatever religious garb that they happen to have. If you were already a civil servant in a particular job, then you get to just continue the way you always have been. But anybody who's been hired
Or is about to be hired,
would have to comply and not wear the hijab or the turban or even the crucifix while they're doing their job.
Right.
While on the clock, basically.
Right.
I wanted to point out that the fleur-de-lis itself is a religious symbol.
Mm-hmm.
Or can be, or at least was in the past, right?
Yeah.
It stems from it. Its history is...
Mm-hmm. Because the image of the flower looks like a crucifix, is that why?
Yeah.
It's also tied to a bunch of different medieval religious
The Trinity
societies.
and
Things.
Exactly.
Yeah.
What you said.
The Trinity thing.
Yeah.
More than the crucifix thing. Okay.
So, oh crap, I totally forgot what I was going to say. Carry on while I try to remember what I was about to bring up.
So I'm of 2 minds on this.
Oh, I just remembered.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay. So one of the main contentions of this bill is that it focuses on religious symbols that would prohibit somebody from accurately participating or practicing their religion. You know, someone who wears a crucifix isn't prevented from practicing their religion, whereas someone who wears a kippah, for example, or the ceremonial Sikh dagger, that's an active part of their religious practice. Right. And by removing that, you're preventing them from accurately portraying what it is they're supposed to be practicing.
It's taking the host out of their mouth kind of thing.
Yeah, in effect. So that's one of the main issues raised by people who are against it. You know, it's unfairly targeting religious minorities and people who need these things to practice their religion. What do you guys think about that?
I think it's a valid argument. I'm just not sure it's a conversation ender. There's just too many ways to practice any and all of the religions, right? You don't it's not like some religions are just inherently orthodox. I mean, whether you're Sikh or Muslim. I mean, especially with the Muslim example, the hijab is not in any way commanded by either the Quran or even the muftis, who are supposedly some kind of authority on the Quran and on the practice of Islam. Even according to them, the hijab is not necessarily sort of commanded.
Would you then tie it in more so with cultural norms or something like that? More so.
That's it. What I'm saying is that it's kind of arbitrary, or it's at least subjective and provisional, depending on whatever context that you're in or whatever flavor that you, by your own lights, decided was more appropriate way of practicing your chosen religion.
So in that sense, then I could wear a hijab and go, it has nothing to do with religion, and there's can't you just claim it's not religious then? In that sense?
You can turn the turn the government's argument against them and no, it's just a cultural thing, like your giant crucifix in the Assemblée Nationale.
Yeah.
Right? But I mean, does any reasonable person actually believe that line? Right? There's certain things, like some people have tried to call hypocrisy on the noted absence of a prohibition on wearing a wedding ring, right? Because the claim is that a wedding ring is inherently a religious symbol. But I mean, obviously, this ignores that marriage is also sort of a civil kind of institution, right? It has a bearing on the way you're secularly kind of treated by the state in terms of your taxes or whatnot, and it can be completely separate from any religious kind of conviction you might have, and people from different religions can get married together, and the ring might not even be something called for in either person's religion, right? So it's just not like it's just objectively known not to be true,
right?
That a ring is an exclusively religious thing, whereas that's not the case for hijab. Mm-hmm. We all know the hijab is a specifically Muslim thing that's invoked by a subset of Muslims who choose to say, oh, that's an authoritative necessity for me to practice my religion.
I can see that point, yeah. Whereas, like you said, the ring is more just, everything you just said. I'm not going to repeat it. Luke?
Luke is a flyer. So patronizing. I mean, Luke.
I have a very difficult time looking at I guess I'm thinking mostly of Christian peoples. When I hear that someone is Christian, or my roommate's going to hang out with someone, and they're really Christian, what that generally means to me is they're fucking crazy, I'm exposed more so to, and I'm more familiar with Christianity and the insanities of Christianity, sort of thing. And generally speaking, when we hear that someone is very religious, what does that mean to you? What, mm-hmm. To me, generally speaking, it means, they're insane. There's some sort of...
It doesn't mean insanity to me, but it does mean like anti-reason. It's like the opposite of reasonable.
Yeah,
well, it means I've chosen to say this is a red line where reason you can't reason with me on this thing because it's a dogma that I'm choosing to enforce for myself.
Right. Yeah. Well, that's what I'm calling insanity.
Yeah.
They have the walls up, and it's bullshit.
Yeah. When I hear I'm super religious, what I hear is I'm super irrational and delusional, and I refuse to listen to any viewpoint that doesn't conform to my pre-existing notions of dogma and ideology like that. Yeah. So let's call that insanity.
Yeah. This is what I'm going to say. This is what I feel. No, I don't want to say that. And so I have a tendency to be quite extreme when it comes to religion and people imposing religion on other people. Mm-hmm. It's never been something that we've liked. The three of us, are not religious people. Mm-hmm. I believe all three of us grew up probably in a Christian household kind of thing, but never embraced Christianity. In fact, all three of us rejected it when we were young, right? Mm-hmm. And not to say we didn't think Jesus was a cool dude. Seems Jesus was a pretty cool dude. No problem with that.
If he existed.
But
even the myth is.
I'm gonna go with Nietzsche. Going, that's the Christian right there. You had one. He was a cool dude, and the rest of them are full of fucking shit, making stuff up. We haven't done very interesting things with...
I like your Christ, but I do not like your Christians. They are so unlike your Christ.
Yeah, exactly. Is this South Park? Because it sounds like
I make it sound like South Park, but I'm pretty sure it's Gandhi. That's
Gandhi, South Park.
Maybe it was Gandhi in that one episode of South Park.
right.
I'm trying to. What I'm trying to bring up here is what is this fantasy world? What would be a world that I would like to see in the future? Would religion become this personalized thing that no one really talks about?
Well, see, what I was alluding to in the introduction of religion gradually dying out to be replaced by secular ideas.
Yeah.
To me, the answer to your question would be religion would be a curiosity from ages past. Something that preoccupied the minds of people before we as a society were able to develop beyond it. It'd be like mythology. We would look upon modern day religions as, in the future, as we look upon the myths of antiquity, of ancient Greece and Rome and such. Like, hey, look how these people worshipped Apollo and Zeus and Thor. And like maybe 2,000 years from now, people will look on Christianity in the same way. Like, these people have viewed this Christ figure as their new savior, and that evolved from all the religions of the past. And I think as we try to, hopefully anyway, if we focus on more progressive ideas and the advancements of science and just trying to do our best to come together as a global civilization, we could eventually do away with these, I'm going to call them dangerous superstitions that religions foster.
Right, beliefs rather than knowledge in that
Beliefs
sense.
rather than knowledge.
Yeah.
Right, yeah. Because, beliefs inform actions and actions have consequences. And when it comes to religious beliefs, some of those actions and consequences can be very dangerous, and they need to be eradicated. But legislating against them isn't the way to go.
You're right, and I have a hard time legislating against anything. I'm a bit of an anarchist in that sense. That wouldn't it be nice if we didn't have to be told to be kind to people,
Yeah.
And we were just kind to people rather than being told and laying down legislation
I'm coming
impose.
I'm coming from my background in Thelema, the whole do what thou wilt thing. Like the liberty of the individual is paramount to anything else, and legislating against it is a violation of natural law.
Okay, but at the same time, you said yourself in your description that this only applies to people who are acting in the name of the state. People who are civil servants doing their job.
Yeah.
And most of which involve dealing with people who aren't in the civil service. So it's people who are basically presenting as a face of the coercive power that is the state towards its subjects, quote unquote.
Right.
So it's people seem to be portraying it as if it's a broader sort of prohibition on freedom of thought and freedom of religion, which is like
I should specify
first
that
section of the charter.
Yeah.
Right. But in essence, this really isn't much different than dress codes, which have been a thing forever, and
you're right.
Nobody had a problem with it until we used the religion label to attach to certain items of attire. Mm-hmm. So
as if someone's clothes is telling you what to do.
Yeah.
My cross around my neck is telling you what I think, but also in effect telling you how you should think as well. This is what it's claiming. It reminds me of the problem that I have with the politically correct movement. We can't assume that we understand the entire picture.
Yeah.
There's more to the story. So
yeah, that's something that's been bothering me a lot lately. Like, it used to be a common sort of righteous value to not be judgmental. It used to at least be broadly considered the more polite way to go is to not be judgmental. Whereas now, it seems like you're negligent if you aren't judgmental.
Right. Like,
which is like perverse.
The whole PC thing was just a general understanding of don't be a dick. Try to be a little bit understanding because other people, have different sensitivities and whatnot. Now it's, if you aren't considerate, you're the fucking dick, right? Like, if you're not proactively falling in line with this whole idea of don't be a dick, you are a dick, right? But to your earlier point about the whole portraying or being the face of the state thing, my issue with it is that they're not, the face of the state isn't necessarily advocating for the religion that these people are practicing, right? So,
but that could be inferred, even if it's not being implied.
Could it?
It could by certain people who are familiar with a whole different
in that
context.
Sense,
like
anything can be inferred.
An immigrant from a literally theological a theocratic state. If they come here and they see, a cop stopping them on the road and he happens to be carrying the same religious symbols as where they come from, or even a different religion, he just thinks, or they could just think, oh, okay, so this isn't all that much different from what I've known all the rest of my life, and there are some rules of the state that I need to be careful about regarding religion, and if you're just prohibiting a cop from being able to put those front and center, those religious symbols and stuff, then you're avoiding any problem to begin with. But at the same time, I can see also the idea that we're an open society, and so most people probably know actually that plurality is more the name of the game here.
That was going to be my counter to what you were just saying. So yeah. Thank you for taking my point for me, for making my point for me. I'm very tired this evening. Luke, back to you.
Good point.
Good point. Bravo. Okay.
I was thinking about like how Star Trek basically does.
Mark's ears pick up. Oh, Star Trek.
Yes, go on.
So Star Trek kind of has an example of a secular future society, right? But in which you've got it's broad on an interstellar scale, right? So you've got all kinds of different aliens and stuff that are participating in Starfleet,
right?
And a bunch of them are kind of in some way displaying some kind of religious affiliation for their own culture, like the Bajoran
like the
earrings
goddamn Bajorans.
The goddamn Bajorans. Right.
Yeah, but overall, the Federation is mostly secular.
That's right, and they're like the military. They usually have uniforms.
They have uniforms, but
I mean, look at Worf. Worf wears his
the bandolier
his sash there.
Yeah, I don't think that's so much a religious icon, more so than a cultural attachment. But, the Starfleet doesn't have, as far as I know, legislation.
But what's the difference between cultural and religious?
Well, I was just going to ask that. Yeah, I'm not sure exactly where you draw the line between cultural and religious.
And I think that's a problem, and I think for a lot of people, it's deliberately equivocated.
Yeah.
And conflated.
Deliberate obfuscation of what they're... Yeah.
Or actually, the contrary is what's...
You're talking about Christians judging the rest of the world. Right?
People want to pretend that religion is a separate category from something more...
Right.
Culture, more emergent and naturally kind of...
It's like the Christmas thing, right? The atheists who still participate in Christmas traditions or whatever, they call themselves cultural Christians in order to get by that, or allow themselves to exchange gifts or put up a Christmas tree or whatever.
Or get together with family.
Yeah. Richard Dawkins labels himself as one.
Sure.
The biggest atheist of them all, arguably. I'm a cultural Christian, so I'll do Christmas.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Because where do you draw the line between what is cultural and what's religious? Because a lot of cultural practices stem from religious ideas originally.
Right. That's the thing. You can't really separate. If you look back far enough, you realize the origins of something, and it's usually some sort of God bullshit kind of stuff,
But I think I was misspeaking earlier. I was what I meant to say was that a lot of people will deliberately say that they're different. That religion is not like culture, and religion is more like race, where it's an immutable, an immutable kind of identity or category that the person doesn't have a choice in, something like disability or sexual orientation.
That's bullshit.
Or race.
Well, yeah,
that
is bullshit.
But that's how most people who are arguing against this Bill 21, I think, are arguing from that perspective. That this is discrimination against religious people, because in their minds
they don't draw the distinction.
In their minds, it's not a valid or relevant fact that a person can take a public service job by just not fucking wearing their burqa while they're being a cop.
Right. That's a bad counter argument to the bill. Like, yeah, it can be considered or viewed as discriminatory, but for that reason is stupid, because the foundation of the argument.
But you don't find generally that a lot of people will defend certain or protect religions and people practicing a certain religion in a certain way, based on something that looks a lot more like the kind of discrimination arguments that we make about
like I totally understand
about disability or race.
I get where that some people would make that argument, but what I'm saying is the foundation of that argument is complete and utter lunacy, because religion is not like race or sexual identity or gender.
It's more like culture and ideology.
Exactly. So to argue against the bill based on that argument, I completely disagree with.
Well, this culture and ideology, the religious culture and ideologies are very imposed on people. And so I can understand that a lot of people don't or can't grasp.
Yeah, it's inherently, it's definitely strictly nurture and not nature.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Sorry,
that's exactly what...
No, that's okay. Yeah. That's good.
Okay.
That's what religion is. It's, it's entirely nurture. It's something that you're brought up in. It's not something that you are, right?
Yet, at the same time, I can also understand that someone in it would see it as being unescapable.
To a certain extent. If they're not exposed to other ways of thinking, then sure, yeah. Which is why I keep coming back to this whole thing of education being of paramount importance when it comes to things like religion.
And not just being inescapable, but just the even if it's not imposed like legally by theocracy or whatever, there's also that whole context of your family and the mores or whatever of your cultural context that does have its own kind of coercion attached to it. Like the risk of being ostracized socially because you're not exhibiting a quote unquote normal application of what the family's religion is.
And the more strict the religion is, the more that point is true. Mm-hmm. If it's a more liberal religion, there's an easier way out of it because the ideology isn't as strenuous and it isn't as imposing on your psyche as something like, let's say, the Westboro Baptist Church would be, or Scientology for that matter. The hardcore religions tend more towards the culty side and tend to keep people locked into it by reinforcing that. It's a self-reinforcing kind of circle. The more you try to get out, the more that people fault you for it or shame you for it, and the more they draw you back into the religion because of the way that, you feel that you can't escape. It's self-reinforcing, and it's terrible. So, I agree with the separation of church and state, but there are other ways of doing it. I don't think this is the right way to do it. I think it's short-sighted the way that they tried to craft this bill. They've been trying to do something along similar lines for like a decade now.
It's up there with the language police and stuff like that.
Yeah.
It's just stupid, and it's not gonna do what you think it's gonna do. You guys are just dicks.
Right.
You're just being fascist assholes. They don't even recognize that your crosses behind you are fucking religious symbols. Like, what the fuck?
Mean, we can't help but look at who keeps putting these forward, and it's people of a certain political bent that are kind of taking advantage of the sort of liberal, open society, pluralism thing to kind of pluck at sort of unliberal things like xenophobia and sort of foment and stoke the flames of xenophobia and ethnocentrism and stuff like that, right? Like,
they throw it back in the faces of the liberal left and be like, hey, you know what? We need a law to protect us against the rise of religious fanaticism because we're a pluralistic society.
Yeah.
Right? And then they introduce bills like this.
Well, laws are a funny thing in the sense that they just make us lazy in terms of whatever that thing is that they're throwing at us. So as soon as we're just following a law blindly, we become ignorant to whatever the fuck we're doing, and eventually we're just retards in terms of that thing, right? And
it's like at work following.
Make me make sense, Jill. Make me make sense.
It's like at work following procedures just because that's the way we've always known it to be done. And not because we reason it every day to be the right way to do it.
That's right, yeah.
Like, why the fuck are we doing this?
Why the fuck do we still do this?
Right, like, why are we still
using
using
typewriters? Why do we have to put a literal carbon copy of this wet signature form into the...
Because that's the way it's done. It's the way we've always done it.
Why do I have to fill this form out in triplicate and submit one to the head office in Toronto? Like, that's just the way we do it, all right?
Why do we have to fax this?
Fax.
We don't even have fax.
Well, you'll have to go downstairs, cross the road, go into building C, room 158, which is on the 15th floor, and try to ask Debbie about where the fax machine is. She's only here on Tuesdays and Fridays.
Shades of Hitchhiker's Guide.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, we're talking about this, so I can't help but picture like some judge on the Supreme Court sitting there covered in like facial tattoos that are like saying something, you know?
Yeah. So
can you ban that? You know, do you ban that?
This is what I was thinking earlier when I brought up like just general dress codes, right? Like you're also not allowed to be a public servant and like wear a Conservative Party pin while right on your lapel while you're being a cop or being a judge on the bench. You're not allowed to do that.
Right. So the in a sense the removal.
So why would you be able to
of individualism?
Wear a pin of another ideological framework?
That's an interesting point.
Yeah, you are not allowed to be an individual.
Well, it's not that you're not allowed to be an individual.
You're allowed to be an individual.
You're not allowed to be an individual in that way.
Within the context.
You're allowed to be an individual within the context that we give you.
Right.
You must be
an
individual in this box.
Yeah. You can be an individual, but let me tell you how to be an individual.
Yeah, exactly. It doesn't really...
I mean, I'm also not allowed to wear my cut-off jean shorts at work.
Gross!
I like to cut them extra high.
I'm really glad this is not a...
Jill and his bum cheeks.
I'm really glad this is not a video podcast.
These cut-off jean shorts I'm wearing right now.
Oh, dear God, no.
With that blouse. You're looking
and I happen to be wearing my Mandela blouse, too.
You're looking good, Jill. You're looking good.
So, what is your idea of a secular society? What would that... You brought up the idea of the Federation in Star Trek. And...
Mark like that.
I did.
I knew you would.
I think that's a prime example of what a secular society could look like. It came about...
Of course you do.
Well, yeah, naturally. Like, it came about naturally. You know, it came about just by virtue of the progress that was made throughout the worlds of the Federation. You know, they have a set amount of guidelines. Like, if you reach this threshold, these are the things to consider if you want to join. You know, if not, then cool. We won't bother you about it. You can keep your religious bullshit. We just don't play in the same ballpark as you guys.
It reminds me of the Orville and that episode where the guy has the baby.
Yes,
female, right?
The Mocklin baby.
And we can't possibly grasp that it would be okay that you kill off the female species,
right?
Because they only have the males, kind of thing. Is this not? And that was their culture, or was that their religion? That was their culture, I guess we could say.
I don't remember. I think it was a cultural thing. I'm not sure.
It was just the way it was for them.
Just the way it was. This is the way we do things.
Yeah.
I mean, again, the two aren't mutually exclusive.
I don't remember the resolve on that episode. What was the resolve?
They went ahead with it.
They went ahead
with killing the baby?
No, they gave her the sex change, turned her into a male.
Oh.
Right.
Because, they didn't kill them off. They gave them the mandatory sex change if they were born female.
Oh, and there was another scenario with that species where divorce is murder.
Right, yeah.
Do you remember that?
Yeah.
Where, like, that's just what you do. When it's time for divorce, you kill your mate.
Man, I remember the captain's like, why the fuck are we allies with these people?
I gotta start watching this Orville.
But it's a good example of just being very different to the point of just not being able to understand.
Right.
Yet we're put into a position where we have to accept it. That is what they do, you know?
No, we don't have to accept it. There's all kinds of both cultural and religious practices that are that everybody actually agrees. Even the people who are apparently outraged by the whole concept of this this Bill 21. There are all kinds of practices that you just are not legally allowed to practice here, and not even just only if you're a civil servant, but as a private citizen, you're not allowed to perform female genital mutilation here in Canada.
Yeah, it was like the Conservatives...
Even if it is a religious practice elsewhere.
It was like the Conservative Party trying to open up that barbaric cultural practices hotline.
Yeah.
Like, we don't need that because
we don't need it.
Right.
That's what the problem with that was,
right.
was even though the rhetoric of it definitely was also about fomenting that kind of xenophobia and stuff and sort of reducing people of other cultural contexts and religions and other countries with a religious context and kind of portraying them as barbaric.
Right.
Full stop. The meat of what was wrong with bringing that in, though, on a more practical level or pragmatic level, is like you said, because we already had laws prohibiting.
Yeah. You can't kill people.
You just can't kill. You can't maim people.
Right.
You can't, even if your religion says to maim people.
Yeah, just no.
Yeah.
Sorry, we don't need a hotline for that. We already
the famous thing about like cutting off a hand of a thief.
Right.
You know, even though that's a religious edict that I believe actually is in the Quran, unlike the hijab. You're not allowed to do that here.
Right, no matter what your religion says.
And no matter what your job is, whether it's public or private sector.
Yeah.
So that's the other thing, too, is that there's a dichotomy that's presented between public and private. And I would say here, there's like a trick that's being played by substituting what we're actually talking about, which is personal life, and calling it private life. And so it allows people to say that, oh, what you want to do is make people hide their ethnic heritage and hide it away in the private sphere.
Yeah.
Whereas, no, that's not at all what this law is doing. It's not even preventing you from putting it in the public sphere. It's just preventing you from putting it front and center in the public service. So in your personal life, like as soon as like it's 5 o'clock and you're off the clock, you can put on your hijab and say goodbye to your colleagues and
then head off. So only when you're working, right?
And walk to the bus stop. And
right.
You know, this law doesn't change that. I find myself kind of surprised that I'm defending the law more than.
Well, I don't think you're defending it.
I think you're
like I'm seeing a lot of different sides to this issue, and I'm not as willing to just relegate all of the arguments in support of the bill to just pure xenophobia, which is what a lot of people lazily would like to do.
Yeah,
and I think it's lazy.
Well, there is a very evident double standard though, with the crosses still being around.
But see. Didn't they actually remove the cross? You said that they didn't remove the cross, but they definitely did remove the cross from the Assemblée Nationale.
When?
I just saw a video on one of the news reports about Bill 21, and there was a guy walking up a ladder there and removing the cross.
Really?
Yeah, they removed it from the Assemblée Nationale. It's no longer on that wall right behind the big throne of the speaker or whoever it is that sits there.
I'm glad they did, but I wish you hadn't said that.
Well, I'm going to say then that is there not rules about the size of things or something like that? Was this early talk, or I can't remember if this is a thing.
I think in the early stages of the bill, they were talking about, well, it can't be visible or whatever, or like it has to be a certain size. It can't be
right. You can wear a small cross, but not a big cross. Kind of thing.
And I think they went back on that, and you're just not allowed to wear a cross.
Period.
On the outside of your clothes,
right,
but if it's hidden, you can. And the argument there for the inconsistency is that you can't wear a hijab under your clothes.
Right.
Like,
well, yeah,
the hijab is the clothes.
You can't hide your turban.
Right.
A small little tiny.
If you put a hat on top of your turban.
Reminded of that Simpsons episode with a giant hat with a camera in it.
I never thought of that. Just hiding it, like you're still wearing the hijab, but you've got just another scarf around it, kind of thing.
Yeah.
But that's just a scarf.
That's just a scarf.
That's just my everyday urban sombrero.
This is not a cross. No, this is a small dagger I use to kill my enemies in case they get too close to me.
I guess I'm going to say that I don't understand I can't possibly grasp the threat that's being interpreted.
That's
right?
just it.
I don't understand where they're coming from.
That's really hard to argue against line of argumentation. I think you're on to something stronger there than a lot of the more often heard critiques of this law. It's the whole idea of like, is there a pressing concern that the state needs to remedy by instituting a law, and does that law reasonably actually provide a remedy to the problem?
Quebec thinks there is. Quebec thinks it's an infringement upon their culture. Like, they see, incorrectly, might I add, that
Quebec trying to protect their fucking culture.
That's the thing. Like, to them, it comes down to protecting their culture, and they see religious diversity as an infringement on it, and this is why they think there is an urgency to pass to have passed the bill.
Yeah.
So we can then conclude that it
this
is
whole realm of argumentation
of
is
their
where
culture.
What's that?
It's fear-based. It's fear of losing Quebec culture.
Yeah. And a lot of Quebecois buy into it because they're very, very much attached to their Quebec culture. They see themselves as completely distinct from the rest
is
of
fine,
Canada.
but what they're using to protect it is this kind of patronizing or paternalistic kind of imposition of protections of one kind of manifestation of the culture.
Absolutely.
Over others.
Yeah.
And that's messed up. That's
totally
I mean, that's just not really defensible.
Not in the least. I can't.
Yeah.
That's the defense of it from the government's perspective. Like, we can't afford to allow our culture to disintegrate because our culture is already under threat by the rest of English Canada. You know, now we have minorities coming in. How dare they?
Yeah.
Ruin the rest of it for us. Really? That's your stance? That's how you're going to position this bill?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's stemming from fear of loss. It's due to attachment, and I can't really stand up for any attachment to anything, really. I'm pretty anti-attachment,
right?
Really,
yeah.
You know.
And like, adapt or change.
Mm-hmm.
That's the reality of the world in which we live. You know, if you're too mired in ancient traditions, you're going to get left behind as the rest of the world progresses and leaves you there.
Well, and they don't seem to take into account the resentment that they're building up amongst people that will now turn to hating whatever they're trying to protect.
I don't know about the resentment thing, because the bill is widely popular, not only in Quebec but in other parts of the country.
Yeah,
like it's a non-issue to a lot of people. They're like, yeah, okay, I agree with that. Don't have religious symbols in the public sphere.
Well, and I'm sure it's very easy for non-religious people to say that. Yeah, absolutely, get rid of it, kind of thing.
Which just reinforces the fact that we're a secular society anyway. So what's the point of having this thing?
Yeah, there's a good argument.
Yeah, like the whole, what's the danger in it?
Yeah.
That's really funny. That paradoxical, like, if the law is super popular, then the law is
unnecessary,
invalid,
because it's just naturally occurring anyway.
Right,
that sort of thing. Right.
Like, it's like one of those, you know, useless motions in the House of Commons where you stand up on principle, like, yeah, I agree with that, but this motion really doesn't change anything.
Yeah,
you know, it's like that's what this law reminds me of.
Right.
Sure. Yeah, sure, let's pass
ban
this.
plastic straws. Okay.
Yeah, we like the environment, so no plastic bags. Like, okay, we were doing that anyway, so like, why do we need a law for it?
Yeah, yeah. Oh my God, do you guys remember? This is so.
I'm going to say no because I generally.
This is so tangential. But there was this person that got fired from their job because they were on a work outing or something, and like a team builder or fun kind of outing, and they went to a veterans cemetery, I think, and there was a sign saying no loud talking and be respectful. And so, as like a joke, she took a picture next to that very patronizing sign, telling you to do things that you're probably going to do anyway, and that you understand there would be consequences for if you didn't, just because you're a fucking human being that lives in a society. But she made a joke where she pantomimes that she's yelling towards the sign and she's giving it the finger. And so she got fired from her job for that, and it got splashed all over conservative news as like, look at this fucking horrible person. She got what was coming to her, because she was being disrespectful or whatever of the sign.
Of the sign.
She wasn't in the cemetery.
So let's disrespect her, a real human being. For cracking a bad joke.
Destroy her livelihood.
Yeah. So it goes to show you what's happening here. And that's what Quebec is doing right now. They're ruining people's lives because they don't like their outfit. You know what I mean?
Right. Because they're being unnecessarily like right-wing authoritarian.
Right.
Yeah.
On that particular issue.
And let's face it, these bills, like you said earlier, tend to come from parties or governments that have a right-wing tendency to begin with. It's not the Quebec culture they're trying to defend, it's their Christian heritage. These are right-wing Christian fanatics who are trying to...
and I'm not so sure about that either. The popular support that you've noted is not just from the right-wing Quebecers or from the Christian
I'm just saying it's
Quebecers.
The party that put it through.
Okay, yeah.
But
the people who are supporting it are also supporting it on the basis of having come out of the Quiet Revolution and having a cultural memory of the Duplessis years,
right? And
living completely under the thumb of what was ostensibly a theocracy in North America. So they have a deep conviction for getting out of the thumb of the Christian Catholic Church, right? And they're supporting this war is not about. Did I say war? This law. They're supporting this law is not about protecting Christianity.
Laws are a war, though.
Sure.
Okay.
You guys both
sure. They're a war on. Awesome. I mean, because I kind of think you've said something a little bit true there. They're a war on
just a little bit true
on individual liberty and emergent competence of a society member.
I'm nodding. Yes.
A citizen. Yeah. Anyway.
So we don't like it.
Well, see,
I still see several sides to it, even though like the whole remedy aspect and stuff like that. That's what maybe tips me a little bit more on the side against it.
Yeah.
More definitively.
See, it sounded like I was 100% against it in my introduction, but I am actually undecided. I don't really know how I feel about it. Like, on the one hand, I think it's an overreach, and I think we don't need the law to be win just because of that argument I already gave. On the other hand, I can see the arguments in favor of it. Mm-hmm. I'm more towards being against it, but at the same time, I can understand why some people would support the thing. Yeah. It might appear as though, like we said earlier, that people in the public sector who are the face of the state could be perceived as representing a certain religion or denomination thereof, even though we're a pluralistic society and an open society, and it should be understood that we have people of all different religions and cultures who live here and represent various ideas and beliefs and ideologies. It's contentious. It always has been a contentious law, and it will be coming into this minority government on the federal level. Like, are you gonna challenge Bill 21? Came up a lot during the debates, even though it really shouldn't have for some reason.
Well, it was basically like a gotcha question.
Yeah. But did it gotcha? I don't think it got him.
No, I mean, Trudeau was very kind of circumspect, and he was hedging his bets.
Yeah, kind of like what we're doing now.
I don't think that's what we're doing. We're just exploring the arguments,
right? Yeah.
On all sides of the issue.
Yeah.
Whereas he was saying, I'm against it, but I can't say for sure whether I would challenge it right now.
Right.
And I'm leaning towards not.
All those openings.
That's Prime Minister Furby's best stuff he's ever done is just avoiding things altogether. Like when he's in trouble, just don't do anything.
Don't do anything.
It'll just be fine.
It'll blow over.
It'll just blow over.
It'll just work itself out.
I had read an article about some scientific research that actually proved that more often than not, problems kind of solve themselves, and so like when you're stressing over a problem, it's actually not that terrible of an idea to just ignore it.
Right. The problem was your mind looking at it in the first place. Yeah, it reminds me.
I can't remember the details of it, but it was something along those lines.
The stress of the recent move that I went through was harder than the move itself.
Yeah.
Like, I was panicking, and then we move, and it's like, that went pretty smooth, actually. That was pretty good. You know?
There you go.
Yeah, we're scared, and that's where these laws are coming from, I think, right?
Yeah.
Final thoughts on the issue of Bill 21 and secularism in general?
I think there should be a law against it.
A law against
a law against the law. I love it. That's a perfect final thought.
There. See, I had a final thought, Mark.
Bravo. Thank you. I like it. That was a good one.
I guess my final thought is just that people are being way too reductive on both sides of the argument for or against it. And I think there needs to be a little bit more of a
reduce. You know?
There needs to be what?
It's like our entire manner of being is reductionist. Like we can only get shit done when we've reduced it, and then look at it and go, okay, well, I can just press this button.
There are too many details. What are you talking about?
Yes or no?
Yes or no?
Yeah, sorry, I cut you off there.
I guess that can stand as my final thought. Then just don't be reductive, and remember that there's nuance in the world.
Yeah.
Right. Yes. Like there are things you don't understand.
Yeah.
Yeah. The things you don't understand.
It does remind me of the politically correct movement sort of thing. You know, like yeah, I get it, but fuck you.
Yeah.
Could that be our next shirt? I get it, but fuck you.
That's a great thing to put on a shirt.
Buy
that for $1.
As for myself, don't be reductionist.
That's mine.
I know. I'm building on it.
He's reducing.
I'm building on. I paused for dramatic.
He's not reducing. He's duplicating. That's the opposite of reducing.
I'm building off of it. I paused for dramatic.
He's multiplying.
God damn it!
He's building now on it.
Oh, my thought is ruined. I don't even know what I was going to say anymore.
I ruined it for you.
No, but I'm all in favor of a secular society. I'm very much in favor of the separation of church and state. Just, that in itself, the law of for the separation of church and state is fine. Don't let religion create laws. What I take issue with is legislating against ideas and ways of thinking. I want to see the gradual, slow, and inevitable death of religion come about over the next 100 years or so. I want to see religion become the stuff of legend and myth, just like we look at ancient Greek myths and ancient Roman myths, and ancient Egyptian myths, for that matter.
Right.
Because religion is mythology.
Yes, this death of God stuff is taking a hell of a long time.
Yeah.
Like, Can we say that it does seem to be at least starting now?
Yeah, Nietzsche was a little premature.
He was a little premature.
Well, he did say that it'll be 100 years before people know what I'm fucking talking about, kind of thing.
Right.
And that's where we're at now, I feel. It's just begun.
Right.
And it's too bad we destroyed the world and all there, and we're gonna die real happy, going like, "Well, sure is cold outside."
Well, I mean, it makes a lot of sense that God will be dead when man is dead because they killed themselves.
Yeah, I think if anything is going to bring about the eradication of religion as I want to see it, it'll be climate change, because we won't be here to see the result.
Maybe we shouldn't be looking at it in terms of an eradication, but a transformation.
Sure, yeah, okay. I stand corrected.
A transformation into oblivion?
No, in the sense that we can still look at the symbolic nature of
I don't even want to see that. I want it to be looked at as mythology, pure mythology.
Why not? Why can't religion actually be looked at as any philosophy? Basically,
because I don't see
a useful system of thought that provides some kind of focus and discipline to be able to wrap your head around
as soon as you
concepts
say system,
and ways of being.
As soon as you say system,
you can't just cherry pick single words out that you don't like. You have to listen to my overall argument.
Because then you're just being...
You were saying...
Because otherwise you're just being religious, Luke. Well, to answer that question, I think that you can get everything you can get out of religion out of other philosophies. Just,
What I'm saying is that religions have played the dirty trick of making certain people believe that they aren't actually the exact same thing as philosophies. The thing that separates a philosophy from a religion is only that religion is artificially dogmatized and imposed as something akin reality. To ethnicity and immutable or what.
And religions have laws and doctrines that you need to follow, otherwise you get burned at the stake.
But philosophies also have rules and principles.
Yeah, but they don't have things like...
And some religions actually do act like a philosophy and actually don't necessarily pretend to be anything other than philosophy, like certain incarnations of Buddhism or even Taoism.
But generally speaking, philosophies don't have commandments. Religions do. They don't have...
Again, like look at Kant. He had basically commandments. He had the
it sounds like you're talking later philosophy. The earlier philosophy had all sorts of commandments.
Yeah, he had like imperatives or whatever.
Yeah, but they didn't result in the damnation of someone's soul and like
only in their non-success.
Yes, but again, that's because of a dishonest person who co-opted what could have lived just as a philosophy and decided to make it some kind of authoritarian thing.
Anyway.
Anyway.
And that's another podcast. One we've probably already had before, but we'll do it again anyway. This has been Critical Junction episode 69. I'm Marc.
Mon nom c'est Luc.
Et moi je suis Gilles.
As always, thanks for listening, and until next time, keep thinking critically.